Brad, we just had an awesome conversation right before this, and I can't wait to get back into that sometime down in the future. But Brad, I'm glad we met, and we were able to connect and have you come on here on Life's Checkmark, and you can share your journey in life. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and then you just jump in and just share with us, who's Brad today. What got you to where you are is where we'll travel in that down that road. How they got to where you are today. But who are you? What are you doing? What you're passionate about? And share with us who Brad is.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Who are we? Who is any of us? Well, awesome to meet you, John, and thanks for having me on here. Yeah, that was some fun stuff we were talking about earlier. So hopefully we'll swing around back to that at some point. But yeah, who am I and what am I all about? How did I get here? I always like to start off by saying I was your once upon a time lethargic, overweight. I always say low self-esteem because low self-esteem implies that you had at least like a little bit, but I had like zero self-esteem. So maybe I should say lethargic, overweight, zero self-esteem, couch potato. And along the way, through the years, I've been on this journey for 15 years now. I would add in bouts of depression and then, bouts of anxiety. In some cases, severe anxiety. I actually had a pretty bad anxiety attack about 2, 3 months ago. And so, yeah, I like to say that's who I was, but who I am now is this guy that is full of life. I like to say happy, healthy, and inspired. And that's my podcast now, which we'll have you on here in a couple of weeks, but live happy, healthy, and inspired. The question is, how do you go from who you are to who you want to be? And so the way to assess like who you are is just take a look at your life and what's going on, everything that's going on, but especially how you're feeling about yourself. Are you feeling like high energy, upbeat, or whatever? That's what I always like to call your starting point. And, for some people, it is, locked in depression or locked in anxiety or something like that. And I always ask the question, well, how's that working for you? That's like a classic, you know, textbook question, I guess. How's that working for you? And in most cases, if people are honest with themselves, they'll say it's not working. The anxiety, the depression, in some cases, the health issues, whether it's in my case, it was just obesity, but it could be other things as well, diabetes, all kinds of blood chemistry issues going on there. Wherever you are, then the question becomes, well, who do you want to be? That's another very powerful question to ask yourself is who do you want to be in life? And so I'm all about coaching people, guiding them into creating that new identity for themselves, establishing the starting point. But then let's look at who you want to be. And I didn't understand this at all. This has taken me a long time to understand in my journey because the first, I think, 2 years of my journey, it was all about, trying to lose weight. That's what I thought it was supposed to be about. But through a series of events and epiphanies and, life events, I realized it's not about losing weight. It's about being healthy. And that became my new identity was who is Brad Carlson. In the beginning stages, it was Brad Carlson is health. Brad Carlson is a healthy person. And at that time, I just focused on the physical aspects of it, and so I became a recreational endurance athlete, triathlons, running. I did every 5K you could do in my community, 10Ks. I eventually worked my way up to half marathons and marathons, and then even did the Spartan runs. But along that time, I always like to say this part of my story too. I got very fit, but the fitter I got, the less healthy I got. And it's funny, the less energy I got. Well, they say if you change your eating, you eat healthy, diet, and you're doing exercise, all that stuff, you're supposed to get more energy. Well, yes and no, but the problem I was having is I was doing all of this and I was overtraining for one, that was a problem. But later on I would learn in my own journey, I did all of that for the wrong reasons. And that becomes a very important part of anybody's journey too, is what do you want in life? What do you want your life to be about? Why are you doing it? What is the motivating factor behind your why? And mine in the beginning was all ego. And so that's why I say I was fit, but I was becoming less and less healthy. And so I didn't understand what it meant to be healthy. So I had to go back and really assess, well, what does it mean to be healthy? And I realized that, there's certainly the physical part of it, which is what most folks know and understand. That's going to the gym or going for a walk or going to do the yoga or whatever. but I hadn't changed my mind yet. So later on, I learned there's a mental part, and then later on, I would learn there's a spiritual part, and then even an emotional part, how I'm feeling. So I eventually crafted my own definition of what does it mean to be healthy, and to me, healthy simply means how you're feeling in the moment. And of course, most of the time, as much as we can, we want to feel that high energy, that upbeat, that like I'm just ready to go out and see carpe diem, seize the moment, seize the day. And along the way, I realized in order to reach that state of health, we have something called a mind. It's like, oh yeah, and we can use our mind to actually, this is incredible. It took me a while to understand this too, to build us up. And I had been using my mind for so long to tear me down. It didn't matter that I understood what health was. If you're telling yourself, even subconsciously that, oh, I'm not good, I'm not worthy. One of my biggest limiting beliefs I had was anything and everything was possible for everyone except for me. That was a huge limiting belief that I had to bring to the surface and deal with and massage and work out. But I realized that, oh, I can use my mind to build me up. Well, that's when I eventually started to add the happy, that, oh, I can use my mind to build myself up. And then I can start choosing, oh, I can choose to be happy. It's about being healthy. Yeah. And I didn't realize that was just part of my identity. My full identity has expanded beyond happy, healthy, and inspired to confident, to my self-esteem is off the charts now. My self-worth is off the charts now. And I did that by simply being aware of how I was feeling, using my mind to build myself up and realize, okay, what is the opposite of low self esteem is high self esteem. So, how did I get there? It was using my mind to build myself up. And then in every moment, it was always about choosing, let's just choose happiness in this moment. Let's just choose inspiration. Let's just choose joy. You get to choose in any moment. This is the neat thing about the mind, too. You get to choose any moment who you are being. And what I've learned, if you don't choose, that choice will automatically be made for you by default. And so in some cases, it becomes depression or it becomes anxiety, things like that. And it's very true. A lot of coaches talk about this metaphor. The more you strengthen a muscle, go to the gym, the stronger that muscle becomes. And when we're talking about like some people call it your psychology muscle, your focus muscle, your nervous system muscle, whatever, the more you say I'm no good or I'm not worthy, guess what? Your system is believing that. And so now you've got to flip the switch and say, oh, I am worthy. Oh, I am enough. I am, worthy of all of this. I am capable of all these things. And you have to get to the point where you believe it. That's key too. You can't just say I am worthy if you don't believe it. You have to get to believe it. So I worked, it was a lot of inner work. It was a lot of self-help therapy, sitting down with my journal and literally asking, what is blocking me from believing in myself? That was a huge question I asked myself. What is blocking me from having high self-esteem? I always, for anybody listening, always focus on what you want to have in your life. And I had been focused on for so long what wasn't working in my life, what I didn't want to have. And that's why I said I was getting fit, but I was not getting healthy. And and intermixed with all this, I mentioned, you have to understand your underlying motivation for doing all this. I was doing all of this, the races and everything out of fear because I thought if I didn't do these races, people wouldn't respect me, they wouldn't admire me, they wouldn't appreciate me. Well, it turns out I had to learn to appreciate myself, admire myself, respect myself. That's how I got my self-esteem back. That's how I got my self-worth back. And so now it's switched from doing all. I still do all the same things. I always tell this to people: what you do never changes unless there's some, weird circumstance or something. But absolutely go to the gym, absolutely lose the weight, whatever it is you want to do. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reason, not because you don't love yourself. It's because you love yourself for who you are, no matter what. No matter how big you are, no matter how overweight you are or underweight you are or whatever, you love yourself unconditionally no matter what. When you get to that point, then you're losing weight for the right reasons because it's not about conditional of, oh, if I lose the weight or if I get certain six-pack abs, then I'll feel confident and feel proud of myself. That's what we call conditional attachment. That's what we call conditional loving yourself, conditional confidence, things like that. It's based on you meeting certain, maybe realistic body parameters or whatnot. But when you do the inner work, ask yourself, what's blocking me from loving myself right now? What's keeping me from feeling worthy about myself right now? You journal those. That's the technique I use is journaling. And it's an amazing journey. You get to the answers, you got to do the inner work. And like I said, and then finally, I became healthy, not just physically, fit, but mentally and spiritually. And that's why I can look here now and smile. And it's just such an amazing, wonderful journey. And to be here on this planet and talk with you, John, and experience life, it's just, I don't know, it's just awesome. So
Yes.
sorry I talk a lot.
No, you're perfectly fine. So I say this to most guests, this is like your stage, right? And I'm not going to interrupt if you're up on top of a stage, right?
Thank you.
So, yeah. So I like to go back a little bit with the working out and everything, because that was something I had to experience for myself. And going through my journey, I was like, okay, I have all this stuff I have all this equipment in the basement. It was given to me years ago. I never touched it. And so I dove down there. I did it 5 days a week, thinking I'm doing it right. And then, I hired a trainer about 2 years ago. And just like that, in 6 months, I was in a position where I felt, I wanted to be, right? Not the six pack, nothing like that, like you said, but, I felt more confident physically. For me to get there, I had to be more confident mentally. And so
Yeah.
I had to work on myself first there, and then I was able to work on myself physically. So they intertwine and they go back and forth with each other. And I see what you're trying to say here is, the more you build up your strength, the more you're building up your mental strength as well. And you're like, I got this. I can keep doing it. And it doesn't even matter if you're working out for an hour or 15 minutes or it's just a walk for 5 minutes. It's something that says, yeah, I did it, right? And you're moving forward. And that helps with your body and helps with your mind. And so I just wanted to share that real quick. But for you working on yourself mentally, you shared your journal. Is there something else that you did as well to help you, feel better mentally?
Honestly, I still do all the physical stuff to help me feel better mentally. I go for a walk every day. This morning I went for a run. I lift weights. I do a lot of body movement type training now, just to trying to teach myself a new program. I do kayaking, paddleboard, and ride my bike, weather permitting, playing with my dog. All of that stuff is kind of what I do. But the number one thing I've done is the journaling. I'll call it, and I hope it's okay to say this is what I call it, and I hope it's okay to say this here. I call it journaling with God, because what I do, I can't remember the exact book or blog or whatever I read that I learned about this, but I heard a phrase that said, you are the question and the answer. And I went, oh. And so I just sat down with my journal one day and I said, what's keeping me from believing in myself? What's blocking me from believing in myself? And I'm like, I got no freaking clue. I'm like, God, what's the answer to this question? And this is what was created. God answered me. I went, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm like, what else can we do, God? So I just started asking all these questions about, what's causing me to have low self-esteem? What's blocking me from, I always focus on what you want. So what's blocking me from having high self-esteem? Because high self-esteem is what I want. The answer came back was you don't respect or appreciate yourself, Brad. That's the exact answer that came back. And I went, oh my God, son of a gun. And I started to realize that, well, I can't really respect or appreciate another person or forgive or value or be proud of until it starts with me. And I learned that the most important relationship you will ever have in your life is the relationship you have with yourself. And that's what I said. I've been using my mind to beat me up for so many years. Like literally, I had this massive weight of negativity, like just plowing over my nervous system, just weighing me down because I had beat myself up. Wasn't even aware of this until just a few years ago. And so that's when I realized, oh, well, why don't I just use this mind to build myself up? But again, it's like, okay, I am worthy. But you can tell when you say a statement like that. You can ask a friend, hey, John, I am worthy. Do you really believe me when I say that? And that your friend will be honest, or you can be honest with yourself if you really believe what you're saying. If you do, then proceed on with life. But if you don't, you've got to stop, get your journal out, ask that question: what is blocking me from believing in myself? And the answer came. I didn't respect myself. I didn't appreciate myself. I didn't value myself. I wasn't even proud of myself. It's like, oh my God, like, how did I beat myself up this much? So I started, like they say, with baby steps. I said, you know what, Brad? No matter what I do today, I'm going to tell myself I'm proud of myself. So if I got up an extra 10 minutes early, I would say, Brad, good job. I'm proud of you. You got up an extra 10 minutes earlier today. And then I started looking back over my life. You know what, Brad? I got a college degree. That's pretty freaking. I got two college degrees. That's freaking awesome. How proud of, all these things that I could be proud of myself. Oh, Brad, you just published another podcast. I'm proud of you for doing that, Brad. And then I realized, it started with being proud of myself, but then I realized, oh, I've got to start respecting myself. There's no reason to disrespect myself. Why am I doing this? And it slowly started to, learn to respect myself, learn to value myself, learn to appreciate myself. And this was a big one too. I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself for being so freaking harsh on myself. I had to forgive myself for being my own worst enemy. And I had to start to be kind to myself. That's a big one. You've got to learn to be kind to yourself, be compassionate, starting with yourself. Everything you want to see and experience in the world, start with yourself. And I always tell people it doesn't start with the tangible. So if I could go back, to this day one of my journey, I still remember it was November 9th or 10th, 2009. But if I could go back to that day, knowing everything I know now, right, having the hindsight of, 15 years of experience, I would start with the inner work. I would start with my journal and I would sit down. What is keeping me? I'm a couch potato now. What is blocking me from being a healthy, thriving individual? That's probably the question I would ask myself. What is blocking me from starting my transformation journey? Fear. Well, what is it about fear that's holding me back? And I always let my higher power answer the questions. Now, it's the most powerful technique exercise I've ever done. Again, I read about it in a blog or something somewhere, but anything you've got going on in your life is a reflection of what's going on in your internal world. You want to do a really, really powerful exercise. Sit down and write down everything going on in your world right now. Divorce, financial bankruptcy, business is going down the tubes. Oh, my daughter's getting married. Write down every single event you have going on in your life and go through event by event by event and ask yourself, is this what I want to be experiencing in my life? If it is, then proceed on. If it's not, well, what do you want to be experiencing? Okay, I don't want to be experiencing divorce. I'm going to guess no. But what's going on within me that's causing this divorce? That's a powerful question to ask yourself. What's going on within me that's causing my business to struggle? I heard a great quote from another mentor. If your business is struggling, it's because you're struggling. If your marriage is struggling, it's because you're struggling. Now, this holds true for both partners too. I would say the same thing to a husband or to a wife or whatever the partnership arrangement is. Those are powerful questions to ask yourself. Here's another powerful question to ask yourself. Anytime you're in an interaction, you're at a stoplight and the stoplight's not working and you're losing your patience. A very powerful question to ask yourself is, what does this say about me? Oh, it says I'm an impatient person. Oh, is that who I really want to be? Is that how I want to show up in the world, as an impatient person? I'm going to guess the answer is no. And then I would ask, well, how do you want to show up in the world? What's the opposite of impatient? I would say the opposite is patient. I want to show up as patient. Now, here's the question. What's blocking me from showing up as a patient person in this world? And then turn that over to your higher power. I thought because impatience was all I knew. I didn't understand the whole yin yang dynamics, that there's an up and a down, a left and a right, a night and a day. There's a patience, there's also an impatience. There's a worthy, there's an unworthy. So there's an opposite to everything. Again, I had been focusing on what wasn't working for me, and that was being impatient. Every time something happened, I would focus on being impatient. And it was subconscious, I didn't know it. And so eventually I was like, oh, well, that's stupid. Why am I doing it? Again, tearing myself down. Why don't I just focus on being patient? And so now every time something like that happens, I just whisper very softly to myself, choose patience. In this moment, just choose patience. Or now I'll choose the word peace. Choose peace, Brad. Choose joy. And it's just a gentle reminder to myself that this is how I want to show up. And what happens when you do that is you're training your system more and more, going to the gym to build yourself up. And I wake up nowadays a lot more refreshed and alive. And I call it your joie de vivre or joy of life. And yeah, it's a back to your original question. What do I do? Yeah, I walk. I do all of that stuff. But for me, journaling, I call it journaling with God, has been by far the most powerful exercise I have ever done. And I'm going to start teaching some workshops on that here starting next year. But I kind of my marketing tool is maybe like you, John. I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on business mentors, on personal development workshops and seminars. Some of the best in the world: Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins, Mark Divine, to name a few names. The Navy SEAL guy, Mark Divine. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books. I've written a couple books myself. Sometimes I say, if I would just do what I wrote in my book, um, I have taken hundreds or spent hundreds of dollars, thousands of hours in courses, online courses, this credential, this certification, this other certification. All of it has helped. It's definitely been beneficial. Don't get me wrong. But the most powerful exercise I've ever done is this journaling with God exercise. And it hasn't cost me a penny. It just cost me a few dollars for a notebook and a pen. Notebook, and I go through one of those, not three ring binder, but spiral notebooks, got about 100 pages. I write front and back. I go through about one of those about every 2 weeks to a month. It kind of depends. So it's a regular habit of mine. Anytime something comes up, oh, I'm feeling, you feel a block of energy flow in you. And I liken that to a kink in the hose. You've got a kink in your energy flow. So I'll sit down and just ask, well, what's blocking my energy flow today? Oh, because I'm worried about this project or something. And again, I'm focusing on what I don't want. So you have to ask yourself, what's the opposite of being worried about something? Well, get excited that it's going to work out. And that's how you shift your mind, is you focus on the opposite thing. Well, what if it does work? Oh my God, I'm going to be super excited if I publish this book, or if whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, back to your original
No,
question
you're
again.
good. It's funny you brought that up because I was just listening to something before this podcast episode about procrastinating, and it's really just people having that fear, right? And so once you go past that fear, then you can see what you're able to do on the other
Yeah,
side.
so real quick, that's a great one. So procrastinating, what's the opposite of procrastination? We'll say it's effective use of time.
Sure.
Something I just that. So then you get your journal out and ask the question, what is blocking me from making effective use of my time? These are huge, very
Yeah.
powerful
What
questions.
fear do I have that's not moving me forward? Yeah, stuff like
That's
that.
another one. That's another one. But I like to, instead of focusing on the fear, I like to focus on, the joy. So what what can I, so I always ask myself, what is blocking me from making effective use of my time? And then once I understand, oh, it's because I have a fear of da 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 da, then I ask myself, well, how do I break through this fear? That's what I asked God, actually. I said, God, what needs to happen in my life in order for me to break through this fear, which is causing me to procrastinate? Because now you've pretty much everything in our life is a belief that we have about something. And that belief oftentimes is rooted in something that we fear. I feared I wouldn't be worthy, that I wouldn't be respected if I didn't do these races. So that's, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. I just to go off of that, I had I'll share this with you. I have a vision board. I made almost probably close to 2 years now. And one of them is being a speaker. And this is, and I never spoke. So and I just told you before we
Man,
hit
I think you're a
record,
great speaker.
thanks. But I just before I hit record, I was just sharing with you, I will be speaking at an event,
Yeah.
somebody else's, and then I'll be doing mine. And then I have another one after that too that I'll be speaking at. And I'm already trying to do more, and I have yet to do one, right? So it's just like it's just like you feel it. You feel something come, like you have to do it because something else is going to happen on the other side. You're going to break through it, and it's just so much that is going to flow to you, right? That's how I'm looking at it for myself. And I believe a lot of other people can look at it that way for whatever it is they want to experience. It's just that one thing they have to just push through, and it's just gonna, the gates are gonna flood open, stuff like that.
Yeah, I say this a lot too. We're so conditioned in our culture, about this idea of working hard, and most of the time when we hear that, we think that means our job, what we do from 8 to 5, work hard, work hard. Rarely do we think that means on ourselves, on our own personal growth and development. So, yeah, how did I go from overweight, lethargic, zero self-esteem, zero self-worth, couch potato to this happy, healthy, inspired, budding entrepreneur slash author slash speaker slash podcaster slash, all of this? I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours journaling with God. That's really what it's been about. I mean, it's a habit now, so I probably spend at least 30 minutes a day. I've been working on one lately. I've had this bad habit of comparing myself to others. Well, how come I'm not a millionaire yet? Or, God, why didn't you make me 6'6", 250 pounds with a rocket arm to be a quarterback in the NFL? And it's been a journey for me, continuing self-love and self-conditioning, self-compassion, realizing that, that wasn't my journey, that my life now is my journey. And this is the journey that, a higher power, the universe has picked for me to have. I'm like, oh my God, that's freaking cool. Like out of all the people to pick, the universe, whatever picked me for this specific path, for this specific purpose. I used to think, that to be fulfilled in life, to have this sense of purpose, I used to think that that was connected to what I was doing in life. But again, that becomes a conditional attachment. This is something Buddha taught. This is something Lao Tzu taught. This is something that's um, many of the mystic masters throughout history have taught. Anytime you have a conditional attachment, that leads to, in the modern world, what we call stress and unfulfillment, and or lack of fulfillment and unsatisfaction with your life and everything. And I realized, you know what? I can be living a life of purpose just here and now, just me being on this journey, because this is a higher power that has chosen all this for me, that has directed this for me. And then my joy of life again, my purpose in life did not became unattached. It was not attached to anything. And then all of a sudden, in many of my journaling sessions, what's blocking that flow of energy? When I realized that, oh, my purpose in life is not attached to what I'm doing, then the energy channel just opened up. If you're familiar with the chakras and the energy channels, you'll feel that energy flow, just like, the heart chakra here up through your, the third eye and out the top of your head. I mean, it's just something, and that is the most powerful energy in the world. And so I'm always now very highly aware of that energy and sensing when it's flowing. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's not flowing. Oh, okay, get out my journal. What's blocking my flow of energy today? Oh, I'm mad at, and I didn't even know this, I'm mad at such and such an event or such and such a person or whatever. Again, subconsciously, what am I doing? Beating myself down. And I'm like, okay, stop, reverse. What am I grateful for in this situation? Or what can I find good in this situation? So it's learning to condition yourself to always build yourself up, to always love yourself, to always appreciate, respect, and value yourself. And yeah, thousands and thousands of hours and pages. I've gone through probably, I don't know, over the last 5 years, I don't know, 100 notebooks, those spiral bound notebooks of just journaling and sitting down and answering this stuff. Because, every coach will tell you there's no magic bullet. This doesn't happen overnight. Any coach that does tell you that, run. You have to do the work on yourself. If you want to go from where you are to who you want to be, my 2 cents on the whole thing is sit down with your journal and ask, who am I? Overweight, lethargic couch potato. Who do I want to be? Nowadays, it's happy, healthy, and inspired. How do I go from point A to point B? You get your journal out and ask God, what is blocking me right now from being my point B? And go from there.
That's great.
And everything else will fall in place after that. So, and after a while, when you have a very powerful motivating factor, everything becomes a habit. There's a book out there, Atomic Habits, which I don't necessarily agree with. It is about doing baby steps, but it's not necessarily, oh, do this every day for 20 days, it'll be a habit, or 60 days, or 6 months. Or I know people that have exercised for 2 or 3 years. It's still not a habit because they're doing it for the wrong reason. I know I've worked with a lot of, I always use this example. I've worked with a lot of military clients over the years as a personal trainer that spent 4 years, 8 years, 12 years in the military. That's a lot of discipline. They're very discipline oriented individuals. And you think with all that discipline, they would continue the physical exercise regime, once they get out. But I can't tell you how many, as soon as they get out of the military, they let themselves go. They gain 50 pounds, 100 pounds. I had one, oh gosh, heartbreaking story. He had to have both his lower legs amputated, a Vietnam vet. Um, Again, there's some more issues there, but point being is it's not, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. It's not necessarily about the discipline. It's about the desire. It's about the drive and the motivating factor behind that. If you're motivated by fear, you're going to need a whole lot of discipline, and it eventually will burn yourself out, which is what I did. If you're motivated by love, then the journey is sustainable forever. I exercise now because it's good for me, not because I think people will love me, appreciate, and respect me.
Hmm.
I already love who I am. I appreciate who I am. I respect who I am now. And so I realize I can still exercise, but now the motivating factor behind it is very different. It's because I love myself. I appreciate myself. I would work with a new client now on just learning to love yourself first, respect yourself first, because without that, your journey is not going to be sustainable. It's going to be motivated by fear and discipline as opposed to peace and love and compassion and desire. So.
Great. This is awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, what are you doing to inspire and help others right now? What resources do you have?
I have, if I could show it, is that okay? I have my
Sure.
book,
There you
Take Back
go.
Your Life, if I could do it like that. This tells my entire journey and everything I've been talking about here. And if you want to go from point A to point B and how to do it, this is a step-by-step manual to do it. Yeah, I'm open to just getting my story out. Thank you, John, for having me here today. But just supporting, I think the greatest thing out of all of this, it's not what we do, it's who we are. It's the energy that we bring to what we do. And you can show up, full of life, full of joy. You can love yourself unconditionally, irregardless of what it is you're doing. And that's the true secret of life. Learning to love yourself unconditionally, learning to find your purpose unconditionally, learning to respect yourself unconditionally, learning to find your joy of life unconditionally. Non-attach. Buddha would say non-attachment, and that's what it is. And when you understand that basic principle, life becomes easy. Life becomes in the flow, and you will absolutely, like my book, take back your life. That part's not easy though, because like I said, you have to do the work on yourself. You have to do the mental push-ups, the journaling push-ups, the journaling sit-ups. Most people aren't conditioned to do that. So I would say, yeah, work harder on yourself. Just what Jim Rohn said, my favorite quote, work harder on yourself than you do your job. Work harder on yourself, commit to yourself, go full out with yourself. Give yourself your absolute very, very best, more than anything you've ever done in your life to get to your point B. And I guarantee it won't be easy, but I also guarantee you will get there. And when you get to that other side, you see it's just I'm so full of peace now. I'm so full of just love for life and love for my life. Um, yeah, it's a wonderful and yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And I highly suggest you find other people to hang around with that can lift you up instead of, the ones that are bringing you down. If there are people around you bringing you down, and you could
That's
just,
part of it too. Your tribe, as we talked about, off camera. Your tribe, absolutely, yeah.
yeah, and it's just like jumping on a podcast like this. You could just listen to the stories that are, being told, and you can learn just that way. You don't have to, go out there and meet somebody right away. You work your way up. And I know you mentioned journaling. I meditate sometimes, so like you just start doing that, 5 minutes, even less if you want to, just to, you know, just sit there in silence if you can, or if you're listening to something, it is what it is. It's your choice. it's just a way to escape it a little bit and find yourself inside and say, I got this, and everything's gonna be okay. Everything is okay, you know. You have
It
to be.
really is. And when you believe that from your heart, your life will be a lot better right away. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And you share that, how you say, oh, thank you for what proud of what you have, proud of what you did. A lot of people forget all that. A lot of people forget everything that they did to get to where they are today. Not
Yeah.
they look at all the
I
bad
was one
stuff,
of those.
but not the good stuff, right? And you got to remember,
Yeah.
like, hey, I did this, I did that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I had to do and how I started. Yeah, I'd forgotten all the good stuff I'd done and just been focusing on the bad stuff. Yeah. I should point out too, for anybody listening, the start of my journey 15 years ago, I had no money, I had no training, I had no knowledge, I had no skills. I didn't hire, I don't even know if health coaches existed 15 years ago. Maybe that was just very beginning. I didn't have money for a personal trainer. I didn't know anything about anything. And it started, so again, the baby step, just one small step, watching a YouTube video, picking up this book, reading a journal, a blog. I was coaching sports at the time. So I learned a lot by coaching cross country and just talking to other coaches about things like nutrition and psychology. And I did go to several high school cross country coaching camps, learned a lot of stuff there. So you just start learning one thing at a time, but you have to be 100% committed to your new identity. That's the most important part of all this. Who do you want to be? And then be that person.
Yeah.
And yeah,
That's exactly right. Um, so you mentioned your podcast as well, that people can connect with you there. So Brad, I have one question I got to ask you. Uh,
sure.
yeah, I'm sure you shared a lot of it already, but what are three key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Three key things. One, you have to know who you are, who you want to be. You have to be able to ask and answer, what do you want your life to be about? And you have to continue to make the focused effort, consistency, and determination on yourself, not your job. Your job is to better yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Um, yeah, and my book will teach you, anyone listening, how to do that.
That's good. That's good. Awesome. Brad, I appreciate you coming on. You shared a lot. Like you shared how you could just go from, anxiety and depression and just, how you got through it, how other people can get through it just like you or other ways. Go ahead.
Well, it's just you just mentioned anxiety. If I could say one thing real quick, yeah. So
Yeah.
I realized I had this anxiety attack 3 months ago, and so I got my journal out and I asked myself, what's going on inside of me that was causing me to be anxious? And it turns out the answer that came to me was I was worried about achieving my goals. Oh, that's the answer my higher power gave me. So then I asked, well, what's the opposite of worrying about achieving my goals? It's being excited about achieving my goals. And I realized the root cause of all anxiety is worry. You're worried about what may or may not happen or something like that. But what if you focused on the opposite? What if you focus on the opposite? Hey, this is going to work out. And that I haven't had any anxiety in the last 6 months. So
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We got that just in time. Yeah.
yeah, thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah. Brad, thanks for coming on. Appreciate sharing your journey in life.
John, thank you for having me, allowing me to just speak my voice today and be heard. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Awesome, awesome show. Awesome to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.